start recording and share the screen. Yeah, and yeah, now like so far in the lesson, we have talked about the system that we are going to create according to the client's requirement, right? So someone should be there and we'll send this requirement. So we identify the requirement, like doing a preliminary investigation. Then we analyze it, then we design it, then we build it, then we test it. Then after we are going to install or implement it, then we are going to maintain it, right? So all these things are happened due to a client requirement. So it is like we are like making a dress according to our requirement, or like we are tailoring a shirt according to our requirement, right? So it will fit for us in 99.9%, right? And if we want anything to be adjusted, still we can tell to the person who is doing it, and we can get the things arranged. But when it comes to the commercial off the shelves packages, or like commercial off the shelves softwares, it is the opposite of that particular thing, right? So these COTS packages, they are predefined, or like uh, the ready-made packages where everyone can reach to the market and purchase it, right? So these systems, like it's available in everywhere, so everyone can access and everyone can purchase it. They for a very like for a, we can't say for a very cheaper price, but comparatively cheaper price, right? And we don't need to wait for a long time, right? Like if you take a system like Microsoft Office, where it has all Office related softwares in it, right? So Word, Excel, PowerPoint, database, and now all these things are inside the Office package. So we can like purchase the Office package without any problem. Like from the point we have purchased it, we can use it from then and there, right? So those kind of systems and softwares are called the COTS packages, commercial off-the-shelf packages or softwares. And there are several advantages and disadvantages comparing to the custom-made softwares. Like if we talk about the advantages, now this can be this is always designed for both the horizontal and vertical markets. Right now, horizontal and vertical markets, in the sense it is kind of a marketing term. තමයි විනාඩියක් දෙන්න මට Right. Sorry for that. So we were talking about the horizontal and vertical market. So in vertical market, එක marketing වල පාවිච්චි කරන term එකක්, broad idea එකක්. Right. In simple terms, vertical market is just provide or the is just focus on a specific goods and services. Right. So like if you take the gold market, right, so it is specifically focused on that particular products done by the gold, right? And horizontal market is not like that. It has a various amount of goods and services, right? So these COT softwares are made for both, are made to satisfy both the markets, horizontal and vertical, right? So either the company or the organization focusing on one particular thing, still it can be used, or a variety of things, still that can be used, right? And so it is one of the advantage which is matching for any type of market, right? And when you're purchasing this kind of a system or a COT system, it's like it is made to satisfy all the requirements, or like most of the requirements of most of the clients, right? Then අපි Word වගේ software එකක් ගැන හිතුවොත්, office package එකේ Word ගැන හිතුවොත්, so like MS Word, like it will satisfy your requirement as well as my requirement, as well as a person who is doing the data entry operation and all these all, all the different requirements than you and me, right? So sometimes what required by me may not be required by you, but COT softwares are able to satisfy both of us, right? So it is one another advantage, right? So to satisfy this particular requirements from all over the world, they are like investing and researching in a very massive manner and understanding what are the things to be made to touch most of the customers from the globe, right? So that is their focus, right? ඒකට යට කරන ඉන්වෙස්ට් කරන මුදලත් වැඩි, ඒ වගේම ටාගට් මාකට් එකත් වැඩි, සේල්ස් උත් වැඩි, right? So now if we think about a COT system are to be made using a custom developed one, like if you need to create your own version of MS Word by giving it to or by handing it over to some software company, will cost you in millions, or like comparatively it is very big expense that you have to spend on this particular COTS package if it is required to be made as a custom tailor, like the custom developed one, right? So comparing to that, so we are having all those facilities from the COTS systems, or like from the COTS packages in a very cheaper price, right? And it is like far more configurable than the custom developed software system, because when they create that, they are creating it to fix into any different platform, right? So configuration is high from the COTS software systems, right? And like the if you take the capabilities, right, and the facilities, like we are receiving many different facilities which may or may not be used by us, but for substantially less cost, right? So like අපි දැන් custom developed system එකක් ගැන හිතුවොත්, the same අපිට අවශ්‍ය වෙන්නේ word වලින් පොඩි කොටසයි කියලා හිතන්නකො, like just assume you need the formatting part of the word. So still if you are trying to create it with the help of a software engineer or like the project group, still your cost like very larger than the COTS package itself. All right. So those can be considered as the advantages of COTS packages, right? And and one another advantage is, now if we create the COTS package, or if we create a custom developed or like by the custom software, like for the future needs, we have to add the things according to our requirement. But when we purchase a COTS package, sometimes our future needs also being fulfilled by the COTS package. Then the same example, if you take the office package, where office package එක purchase කරන්නේ maybe to like format a document, but later you can take the help of proofreading, mail merging facilities, right? There are many kinds of additional features which may not require us for this particular moment, but in the future, we already purchase when we are doing the COTS package purchasing, right? So it will, in one way, it will save the money and the time that we need in the future, right? And when it comes to the disadvantages, since the COTS package are trying to touch all the client requirements from the globe, it's complex. Now, if you think about the Word packages or like the Office packages, there are many different tabs that we never touch for our entire life, right? So I am using the Word for like for now like more than 10 to 15 years, but there are some tabs that I never use for my particular works, right? But we have to pay for that, right? Even though it is cheaper, but in one hand, we have paid something that we don't want, right? And for some scenarios, because of the complexity, it takes time for us to learn that thing. Now, if you think about a formula writing inside an Excel sheet, some simple formula can be populated very easy way, like by just a general logic thinking. But if you think about something advanced, you have to research it, and you have to search for it, how the things are going to made within this, right? So you have to understand and you have to learn how those things can be done. Now, when it comes to the custom developed system, you can have the help from the project team in such scenario, as well as we are requesting the things that we know, the things that we are already doing in our system. So it is very it is hard to find something complex for us. අපි දන්නම දේ තමයි අපි කියලා කරගන්නේ අපිට lazy විදියකට. Right? So that kind of a disadvantage can be there. Right? And the major concern goes with the organization's business process. Now, it is a critical factor when it comes to organization. There is a way of their business getting done in the organization for any particular business, right? So when we create a custom-made system, we are creating it to be parallel with our business process. අපිට ඕන විදිහට අපේ වැඩේ යන විදිහටම තමයි අපි custom developed system එක හදාගන්නේ, right? But when it comes to the COTS packages, there can be gaps in between how our business process flows and how the COT system works, right? So like as the next topics we learn about, we talk about what to be done on such scenarios. But if we are not understanding the gap between the business process and the system, sometimes it may lead to a very disastrous points if we do not analyze it clearly and carefully, right? And when it comes to the custom developed softwares, it is considered as an asset to an organization, right? Organization එකට තියෙන වත්කමක් ඒක, right? If it is custom development, so because they are the people that only own that particular software because it is create only for their organization and only for their requirement. But when it comes to the COTS, nothing like that. So like having something unique to us will create a competitive advantage in our business, right? So if the system is with us, comparing to the competitors, it is a plus point for us. So we call it that custom-made softwares are giving a competitive advantage for a particular organization. But when it comes to the COTS, it is not like that because it can be purchased by any organization. So everyone will receive the same package, right? There are ways or there are ups and downs how that package is going to use, but still it's not going to be a competitive advantage. Right. Okay. Is that clear, people, up to this point? What is a COTS package and what are the advantages and disadvantages of them? Right. Okay. So then this is about the advantages of custom developed software systems. So we know them already, right? So like because it make a general චිත්‍රයක් විදිහට මතක තියාගන්න නිර්මාණ. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි කියලා දෙයක් හදාගන්න එකකයි තියෙන එකක් අරගන්න එකකයි තියෙන වෙනස අපි මේ කතා කරන්නේ. රයිට් ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ ප්‍රැක්ටිකල් නේද? ජීවිතේට දාලා ගන්නත් පුළුවන් නේද ඔයගොල්ලන්ට?
එක්සෑම් එකට ගොඩක් අහනවද ඔක?
නෑ නෑ මේක මෙහෙමයි. මේක මෙහෙම ලොකුවට විස්තර කරන්න අහන්නේ නැහැ. එහෙම අහලත් නැහැ. රයිට්? ඔක ඒක මම කිව්වේ මේකේ පික්චර් එක ඔළුවේ තියාගන්න. මොකද සමහරවිට MCQs අහන්න පුළුවන්. right වැඩි මුණොත් short note එකක් ලියන්න දෙන්න පුළුවන් short note එක කියලා කියන්නේ පේලි 3-4ක් මේ ගැන right advantages then as an example they may ask like compare or like the state advantages and disadvantages of the COTS packages ඒතරට නිකන් points 3 වගේ මතක නම් advantages and disadvantages so you can choose right likewise. Right. So when it comes to the disadvantages of the custom developed softwares, since it is said and made, so we have exactly what we need, right? That means the organization is having exactly what they need, right? And it is very easy to like modify and change or improve according to the business, right? Because it developed in a parallel manner to the business process, right? And it is very easy to fix with the existing system. දැනට තියෙන system එකත් එක්ක දාගන්න හරි lazy. Unlike a COTS package, I told you when we take a COTS package, there will be a gap, right? So අපි දැනට වැඩේ කරගෙන යන විදිහම නොවෙන්න පුළුවන් COTS package එකේ implement වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. So we have to fill that gap, right? But when it comes to the custom developed software, there is no gaps in between our process and the system's process. It's the same thing happens, right? So only thing is like now it can be done in a much better way and a much faster manner, right? And the custom developed software can provide you only the needed things and there will be zero unneeded things for you, right? Because we are saying this is what we need, and this project team is creating only what we are asked them to do, right? Yeah, let me hear just a second. Right. And when it comes to the operational side, or like when the system is being implemented in the organization, operators feel no extra pressure to work with the custom developed software, because they will see it is the same system but in a computerized manner that we are going to do. So they are doing the same thing, right? In most of the cases they feel it is easier for them. But when it comes to the COT system, sometimes the organization may require to ask from the employees to change the way they are working to be set with the COTS package, which will build an extra pressure, right? And as I told you earlier, having a having a custom developed software will gain a competitive advantage on the on the race, right? So there are many different competitors can be there to the organization. So if they have their own system which is made only for them, will gain them a competitive advantage, right? So it will become an asset to the company. And if we talk about the disadvantage, there are not many disadvantages, but the cost and the initial investment will be very high when we are creating a custom developed software. And the development process can take a very long time, right? If the requirements are complex, right? So unlike COTS packages, තියෙන්නේ නිකන් ගිහිල්ලා purchase කරන්න. So we can go and take and install it and use, right? So it will not take 5 to 10 minutes for us to do the particular thing. But custom developed software will take considerable amount of time, right? So those are the advantages, disadvantages of the custom developed software system, right? So next is to talk about the business process. Now this is to why we are talking about the business process, because we are going to talk about the business process gap analysis. So without that, without business process, we won't be able to talk about the business process gap, right? So business process in simple terms, those are the activities, responsibilities, resources, and data flows that interact to accomplish a business function, right? So the things that we can see when we step into organization, what are the things they do, what are the responsibilities, resources that they have. So in simple terms, how the business really happens, that is what we call business process, right? And when we are modeling the business process, if it is a custom developed one, we are going to model it very carefully, because when it comes to a custom developed software, we are creating something to support the business model, or like to support the business process so far they have, right? And now, as this is, business process modeling involves in-depth analysis and then an optimization of the business process by removing inefficiencies and bottlenecks, right? So කියන්නේ මොනම අවස්ථාවකවත් හිර වෙලා ඉන්න අපිට ඉඩ තියන්නේ. Those are called bottlenecks. අපි process එකක හිර වෙනවා කියලා කියන්නේ බෝතලයක ඒකට bottleneck කියලා වචනේ ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ මේකයි. වතුර ඇවිල්ලා නේද? neck එක ගාව හිර වෙන එක නෙවෙන්නේ. එතනින් වතුර සාමාන්‍ය විදිහට flow වෙන්නේ නැහැනේ. So business එකක bottleneck එකක් තිබ්බොත් total process එකම slow වෙනවා. Right? So modeling is done to avoid or to minimize those kind of things. And the gap analysis will be there if the company decides to purchase a COTS package to be taken their business process, right? So definitely that particular COTS package will not 100% will not give 100% matching with the business process. It will give portion of that, like 60 to 70%. Yeah, it will be okay, but there will be a gap always, right? So before any company goes for such purchasing of a COTS package, they have to analyze the gap very thoroughly. Otherwise, the first thing will happen, their investment will be in vain, right? Investment. Then secondly, it can draw the business into a bankrupt positions, or like less efficiency scenarios, kind of things, right? So before they purchase a particular COT system, they have to analyze the gap very carefully. Then after, what they are doing is they will create the ways or the methods to minimize this gap between the COTS package and the business process. මුලින්ම ඇනලයිස් කරලා බලනවා කොච්චර ඈතයිද කියලා. දැන් බිස්නස් ප්‍රොසෙස් එකක් කියලා කිව්වම හැම තැනම COTS package එකට match නොවෙන අවස්ථාවක් එන්න ගොඩක් අමාරුයි, right? But there will be some considerable amount which is not being matched, right? So they have to understand why it is not matched, and they have to create the plans how this particular gap can be minimized, right? So making that kind of strategies and implementing those to minimize the gap between the COTS package and this business process is called the business process mapping, right? So in this particular mappings, there will be some places where the business process need to be changed slightly, not majorly, and the COTS packages are also being configured to be minimize the gap in between these two, right? But in most of the cases, like there will be gaps where they can't match, right? එතකොට ඒ gap එක ඒ කියන්නේ match කරන්න බෑ කියන්නේ system එකෙන් match කරගන්න බැරි දේවල්, right? So sometimes there will be some manual works, or the old fashioned works will be there to fill that particular gap, right? එතකොට ඒක solution එකෙම නැත්නම් COTS package එකෙන්ම gap එක වහගන්න බැරි වෙන අවස්ථා තියෙන්න පුළුවන්, right? And the worst part means like the extreme part of this is if we cannot match, like if the gap is very big at some point of this COTS package and the business process, they may require to develop an intermediary system to match that gap, right? ඒ කියන්නේ අර හරියට අපි ගත්ත ෂර්ට් එක අපිට නේද උරහිස් වලින් ෂෝල්ඩර්ස් වලින් ඕකේ, හැබැයි මේ ස්ලීව්ස් දෙක ගොඩක් ලොකුයි. ඉතින් ඒ වෙලාවට අපි කරන්නේ නේද ටේලර් කෙනෙක් ගාවට ගිහිල්ලා හරි නැත්නම් අහන්න දන්නව නම් ගෙදර අම්මා හරි තාත්තා හරි මේ අත අපිට ගැලපෙන විදිහට අපි හදා ගන්නවා. So it's a custom made thing then after. So likewise, if the business process and the COTS package gap is greater at some points, they may have to create some bridges, which is going to be custom developed softwares, small ones, to fill that particular gap. And creating a custom developed one means you have to spend on those things, and which is will incur you some cost, right? Okay, so that will be the end of the 7th lesson, right? So we are done with this, and we discuss about the things or the questions that can come through this lesson. So yeah, keep that in mind, people. I think we have tried the 2017 question as well as 2018 question regarding this. Am I correct? Did we do both 217 and 218 question, or is it just 217? People? Is it just 217? Okay. People, it's better we try the 218 one as well. Right? I'll send you the picture. Right? Let me see. Let me see. I know I have to get it for you. Hold on. Give me a second. I'll take the 218 one, and it's better we try that as well. Right? Again, it's going to be a fill in the blank kind of a thing. Right? Yeah. This is the one. Yeah, it's yeah, I'll put the I'll put it like this. So the question is, by reading the scenario, you have to fill out the data flows where they have labeled from.
यार ये सती वाकई में करने हैं?
Oh, okay, Satya Wage mein kaam. Right. Okay, if you got a past paper book, you can refer to this. This is 2018. I'm sending the question as well. Right. Just a second. Now, this is a half an hour question, and there is another part. I'll send you that as well, right? So just go through this. It doesn't matter, right? Let me send you this. Okay, give it a try. I'll give you 15 minutes. It's 5:10 now. I will be discussing the question by 5:25. Just give me a second. I'll be back. If you got any question, just ask from me, right?
So answer කිවලදී
Yes, Nirmala.
සර් WhatsApp එකට දැම්ම පොඩ්ඩ බලන්න.
හරි මම බලනවා. තව එක්කෙනෙක්ගෙත් ආවා මුලින්ම ඉන්න කවුද මුලින්ම තමයි මිනිදුව yeah, let me see. A, yes, application, yes, correct. A is correct. B, acknowledgement, yes, that is correct. And the C, eligibility criteria, yes. D, request. Yeah, it's better you say request for electoral list, or like it's much better request details of electoral list, right? And yeah, E is electoral list. F, again, a request for residential status, or the you can say the confirmation details of the residence, right? Then the confirmation of the residence, yes or yes, and or the, we can say residential status as well, no problem. Acceptance and rejection status, yes, that is correct. Yeah, I is going to be the yeah, Dua, I is going to be the interview letter. So they are, when everything is okay, they are calling for interview. So calling happens like sending the interview letter, or the interview date and time, or the interview venue, kind of things, right? And J, it should be the interview list. Dua. It's not just interview list. And K, it's going to be interview schedule. Yes, yes, definitely. Yeah. Nirmana ko බලමු. Yes. නිර්මාණ මට මුල ටික පැහැදිලි නෑ පුතේ ඔයාගේ. මේ පළවෙනිම එක තියෙන්නේ
Sir, application කියලා.
application.
Acknowledgement.
දෙවෙනි එක acknowledgement. Okay. තුන්වෙනි එක eligibility criteria. Yes. Yes. ඊළඟ එක request එක මොකක්ද කියලා කියන්න නිර්මාණ. Right. So request for electoral list. එපා නැත්නම් request details of electoral list, right? Likewise, right? Larindi, I received yours over here. I'll come to that, right? Then Nirmana, electoral list is right, for that is for E. F, request, yeah, request in the confirmation කියලා ලියන්න එපා. මේ
Sir, requesting the confirmation of residence කියලා ලියුවා.
එතකොට request in කිව්වම verb එකක් වෙනවනේ. ඒක request of, ඒ කියන්නේ ඉල්ලීම කියන එක. right? ඒ කියන්නේ ක්‍රියාපදයක් නෙවෙයි නිර්මාණයක නාමපදයක් විදිහට ලියවෙන්න ඕනේ. request in කිව්වොත් එතන අපි ක්‍රියාවක් ඉදිරිපත් කරන්නේ. request කියන වචනේ විතරක් ලිව්වොත්, ඒ කියන්නේ request of the confirmation list, එහෙම වුණා confirmation of resident, එතකොට ඒක නාමපදයක් විදිහට කියන්නේ මොකක් හරි ඉල්ලීමක්, letter එකක් හෝ යම් කිසි දෙයක් එකකින් indicate වෙනවා. right? And confirmation of the residence, okay, accept, reject status කියන එකෙන් ඕනේ නිර්මාණ H එකට accept, reject, accepted, rejected status.
Sir, you can say past tense ගන්න නැද්ද?
නෑ, past tense නෙවෙයි එතන ගැටලුව වෙන්නේ. මෙතන accepted, rejected කියලා කියන්නේ අනුමත කරන ලද නැත්නම් අනුමත නොකරන ලද, right? නැත්නම් ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කරන ලද, right? බාරගත් බව සහ ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කිරීම එතන තියෙන. එතන verbs දෙකක් තියෙන්නේ. verb එකයි නිර්මාණ අපි කඩන්න ඕනේ. ඒතර accepted, rejected status කියලා කිව්වම තත්ත්වයක් ගැන කතා කරන්නේ, right? ඒ කියන්නේ අනුමත කිරීමේ හෝ ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කිරීමේ තත්ත්වය. ඒක ඩීටේල් එකක්. ඔයා ලියපු විදිහට අනුමත කිරීම සහ ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කිරීම කියන තැනට යනවා. right? එතන පොඩ්ඩක් අනිවාර්යෙන් බලන්න. right? okay, then J එක වෙන්න ඕනේ නේද? J එක ගොඩක් කට්ටිය පටලගෙන තියෙනවා. interview list එක වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒ කියන්නේ ඉන්ටර්විව් කරන කට්ටියනේ එතනදී කන්ෆර්ම් කරන්නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ කමියුනිකේට් කරගන්නේ.
ඒක හරියද?
I එක interviews කියලා විතරක් එන්න බෑ. නිර්මාණ interview letter වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒ කියන්නේ interview කියලා කියන්නේ ආයසරයක් ක්‍රියාපදයක් පැත්තට යන දෙයක් නේ. right? The interview letter, නැත්නම් interview date and time, interview venue, likewise, right? And J can on interview list, K can on interview schedule. Yes. right. Okay.
සර්
අපි
මෙතන තියෙන ඉතින් ඉන්ටර්විව්ස් කියන එකනේ.
මොකද පුතේ?
කියන්නේ මෙතන තියෙන ඉන්ටර්විව්ස් කියන එකනේ අපිට ගන්න තියෙන්නේ. The school obtains the valid applications from the data store applications and
ඔව්.
schedules the qualified applications for interviews කියලා තියෙන්නේ.
ඉන්ටර්වියුස් හරි. එතකොට එතන කියන්නේ නිර්මාණ සිද්ධ වෙන ක්‍රියාවලියනේ. School obtain the valid application from the data store applications and schedule the qualified applicants for the interviews. කියන්නේ interview එකට qualified applicants ලා ලෑස්ති කරනවා කියන එක. එතකොට අපි එතනදී communicate කරගන්න ඕනේ. අපි දැන් data flow එකේදී communicate කරන්නේ නිර්මාණ data එකනේ. අපි කරන ක්‍රියාව නෙවෙයිනේ. දැන් ඔයා interviews කියලා ලිව්වොත් එතන idea වෙන්නේ interview කිරීමක් ගැන. right? එතකොට අපි කියන්න ඕනේ ඒක වෙනුවෙන් මොකක්ද මේගොල්ලෝ අතර උවමාරු වෙන data එක කියන එක.
මම interview list කියලාද ගන්න?
ඔව් interview list interview list එන්නේ පුතේ J වලට. right? I වලට එන්නේ interview letter එක. කියන්නේ අර දැනුවත් කිරීමක් නේ ඒගොල්ලන්ට කරන්නේ. interview එක ගැන ඒගොල්ලන්ට දැනුවත් කිරීමක් නේ කරන්නේ. right? I කියන එක නා බැලුවොත් applicant ගේ පැත්තටනේ ඊතල යන්නේ.
ඔව් සර්.
එතකොට එතනට යන්න ඕනේ එක්ක interview letter එක document එකක් විදියට. එහෙම නැත්නම් interview date and time. එතකොට ඒක data එකක් වෙනවා. right? නැත්නම් interview venue data එකක් වෙනවා. ඒ වගේ තත්ත්වයක් යන්න ඕනේ. right? ඒ කියන්නේ interview එක ගැන applicant යන data එක මොකක්ද කියලා අපි උතෙන්දි පෙන්නන්නේ. right? තේරුණාද නිර්මාණ?
ඔව් සර් හරි.
ඔයා උතන ඉන්ටර්විව් කියලා ලිව්වොත් බලන කෙනාට තේරුම් ගන්න බැහැනේ. මොකක්ද මේ ඉන්ටර්විව් කියන්නේ මොකක්ද data එක? මොකක්ද කියලා එන්නේ නැහැනේ. අන්න එතනයි ගැටලුව තියෙන්නේ.
හරි සර්. සර් කේක හරිනේ. ඒක නම් කොහොමද තරගම
කේක හරි J එකටත් ඉන්ටර්විව් ෂෙඩියුල් කියලාම දාන්න පුළුවන්. මට මතක විදියට ඔරිජිනල් මාකින් ස්කීම් එකේ තිබුණා අපි ඔරිජිනල් මාකින් ස්කීම් එක පොඩ්ඩක් රිෆර් කරමු. ලලින්දි for your answers yeah application acknowledgement okay eligibility criteria C yes දුව DNA දෙකටම ඉලෙක්ටෝරියල් ලිස්ට් දාන්න එපා. මොකද ඉලෙක්ටෝරියල් ලිස්ට් කියන ડોකියුමන්ට් එක එන්නේ ඉලෙක්ටෝරියල් ලිස්ට් එක රික්වෙස්ට් කරාම උද. එතකොට D කියන එක යන්නේ ඉලෙක්ෂන් ඔතොරිටි එක පැත්තටනේ. එතකොට අපිට ඒ පැත්තට ඉලෙක්ටෝරියල් ලිස්ට් එකක් ප්‍රොසෙස් එකකින් යවන්න බෑ. process එකට electoral request එකේ electoral list එක request කිරීම තමයි ඒ පැත්තට සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ. එතකොට අපි date එක වෙන්න ඕනේ request details of the electoral list. right? ඊට පස්සේ ඔයාට E එක receive වෙන්නේ electoral list. It is a document. right? ඊළඟට F එකයි G එකත් ওই විදිහමයි. දෙකටම confirmation of residence ගන්න එපා. F එක කියලා කියන්නේ request for confirmation residence. right? නැත්නම් request details of confirmation of residence. then ඔයාට receive වෙන්නේ confirmation of residence. ඒක letter එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. එහෙම දීපු මොකක් document එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. right? H එක දුව එතනදු අරගෙන තියෙනවා වැරදි. එතන එන්න ඕනේ acceptance or rejection status. status එක inform වීමක් තමයි එතන සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ. right? H එක යන්නේ applicant ගේ පැත්තටනේ. right? එතකොට එයාට application එක යවලා හරියන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි එතනින් එයාට දැනුවත් කරන detail එකයි දුව යන්න ඕනේ. දැන් A කියන එක application කියන එක හරි. මොකද applicant application එක කියන total document එක දෙන්නේ. but H කියන line එක තියෙන්නේ application එක accepted ද rejected ද කියන එක inform කරන්න. right? එතකොට එතන එන්න ඕනේ status එක. and IJK වල J and K වලට interview schedule එක okay. I වලට it's better you say interview letter එහෙම නැත්නම් interview venue. right? මොකද හැබැයි IJ I වලටත් interview schedule එකක් ගැටලුවක් නැහැ. හැබැයි අපි ආගියු කරලා බැලුවොත් බලමුකෝ ඔරිජිනල් මාකින් ස්කීම් එක කොහොමද කියලා. right? Right. Oh, yes. Yes. K and L interview schedule කියලා ගන්න පුළුවන්. I එක ඒගොල්ලෝ consider කරලා තියෙන්නේ it's interview letter, interview date and time, venue, that kind of a way. Right. එතකොට I එකේදී interview schedule කියන එක තත්පරයක් ඉන්නවා. එතනදුව මෙතනින් අපිට අල්ලගන්න පුළුවන්. In the last line it says then it calls the application then it calls the applicant for interviews and send the interview schedule to the education authority. Right now schedule can have many different interviews, right? So we can't say I as the interview schedule, otherwise then we have to specify that the interview schedule for a particular person, right? Or otherwise we can say the calling letter or the interview calling letter, right? Interview date and time. So much better you go with these things, right? Right, okay. Now how about others? අපි පොඩ්ඩක් ඩිස්කස් කරමු නේද? දැන් වෙලාවත් ගිහිලා තියෙන නිසා. Right, let me check. Take the question. Dilsara, right? Okay, let me see yours. Yes. Yes, A is application, second one is eligibility criteria. Okay, eligibility criteria. Yes, okay. Yes. Yeah, for the D part, it's better you say request of electoral list. Otherwise, it's acting as a verb, request electoral list. Electoral list එක ඉල්ලනවා. Right? Request of electoral list means electoral list ඉල්ලීම කියලා කියන්නේ එතකොට අපි letter එකකින් ඉල්ලන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ වගේ the document, right? And E electoral list, it's correct. Confirmation of residence. Yeah. So F එක Dilsara, so you have to say request for confirmation of residence, right? කියන්නේ residence confirm කරන්න කියලා කරන ඉල්ලීම, right? Then the G don't write send word. එහෙමනොත් එක verb එකක් වෙනවා. So it's just like what? Confirmation of residence, right? කියන්නේ පදිංචිය තහවුරු කිරීම. එක document එකක්, right? Right, නැත්නම් if you say like document of residence confirmation, right? And yeah, H is correct, accepted, rejected status. Interview letter is correct for I, very good. And J is interview schedule. K is also interview schedule. Like if you think about the K, it is from the schedule interviews, from the process schedule interviews to the interview schedule data store. So it's the same thing. Interview schedule එකම තමයි එතනට save කරන්න යන්න ඕනේ. Right? Okay, so for others, I'll illustrate the things in the whiteboard, right? So just a second. Right. So it says the school admission process of certain country is explained using a description and the data flow diagram given below. The applicant sends the application to the respective school. So applicants send the application. Now this is something that we can capture, right? So A is going to be the application, right? So this is goes with A. To the respective school, the school sends an acknowledgement to the applicant. So acknowledgement, that can be a document. So it is going to be the B. Right? And it says the school then verifies the information in the application by checking the followings, right? So now the application has received at the process acknowledgement. So applications are stored into the applications data store, right? Then what they are doing is they are going to validate or verify it is eligibility of applicant by using the eligibility criteria taken from the data store eligibility criteria. So eligibility criteria is taken from the data store, right? So eligibility criteria will be the C, right? So this is going to be C. And registration in the electorate by requesting the electoral list from the election authority. So election authority is going to be an external entity. So from that they will request, right? So D is going to be, this is where a lot of you have gone wrong. So request for electoral list, right? So it can be a particular letter mentioning we need these details regarding this particular applicant, right? Then this is in the E, it is the electoral list, right? So same happens with the divisional secretariat. So they are here, they are first they request for residence confirmation. Then they are getting the confirmation of residence. Right? So that is how the DEFG is getting filled. Then after verification of information, the applicant is informed whether the application has been accepted or rejected, which is noted in the application and store in the data store applications, right? So application එක note down කරනවා reject the accepted ද කියලා ඒක store කරනවා applications කියන data store එකේ. දැන් ඔයගලන්ට මෙන්න මෙතනින්ම අල්ල ගන්න පුළුවන් applicant ගේ පැත්තට යවන්නේ මොකක්ද කියන එක, right? එතනින්ම ගන්න පුළුවන් acceptance rejection status, right? So same comes there, right? ඕකම තමයි මෙතනට එන්නේ. Then the school obtained the valid application from the data store applications and scheduled the qualified applicants for interviews. Then it calls the applicant for interview and send the interview schedule to the education authority. So call, so the calling letter or like the interview details, something like that, goes from schedule interviews to applicant. And again, interview, they say interview schedule and send the interview schedule to the education authority. There you got a concrete name, interview schedule. So J and K both are going to be interview schedules. Right? So likewise, you can fill out the things. Then metana product neda ogolo study කරන්න කොහොමද මේක වෙලා තියෙන්නේ කියන එක. Right? ඒගොල්ලෝ මොන විදිහටද මේක ඇඳලා තියෙන්නේ, right? How they have planned this thing. ඕව තමයි ඔයගලන්ට study කරන්න තියෙන්නේ ප්‍රශ්නෙට අමතරව. Right? All right. So there is one another question. Let's keep it for the for a future day, and I'm going to the next lesson, which is the 8th lesson, which is called database management systems, right? So where we are going to learn about the how we are going to create a particular database and how we are going to interact with a particular database, right? So this lesson is totally about creating a database and talking with a database. To create the database or to plan the database, we use a diagram called ER diagram, entity relationship diagram, right? Where you are going to have a question, right, to draw an ER diagram. It has came in the structured paper as well as in the essay paper so far, right? And then you are going to learn how to create a database using the language called SQL, structured query language, and how to deal with the particular database, right? So still we are using structured query language to do the dealing or the transaction with the database, right? So first of all, let's learn how to create or like how to plan a particular database, right? So that means I'm going to talk to you how to draw the particular plan for the database, right? So people have the heading database management systems, right? Let me write that for you as well. Oh, it's better I get rid of these things. Okay, clearing, it seems clearing takes some time. So it's better you say the main heading, database management systems, right? So it is the 8th unit. So far we are done with 7 units, right? So under that, put the subheading entity relationship diagram, within brackets, ER diagram. Jinani, it's the database management systems. Database management systems, that is the main heading. Then the subheading,
So ඒතර අපිට කලින් පාඩමේ ලොකු ප්‍රශ්නයකට આવොත් ඉන්නේ දැන් ඉස්සෙල්ලා කරා වගේ එකක්ද?
DFT. Oh.
හරි සර්.
Right, and the subheading is entity relationship diagram. So this, in a short form, we are saying ER diagrams. There's the copies will be get ready by this week. So you can, if you can visit here, then you can collect the copy. I'll send you the details to the group, right? So mama me moment එක print කරන්න ගියේ නැහැ පොඩ්ඩක් නේද සංචරණ සීමා දාලා තියෙන නිසා. I'll prepare it by this week, so you will be able to collect that, right? Okay, so inside an ER diagram, then මේ ER diagram එක අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් කියන්නේ database එකක් develop කරනකොට what happens is, now this is related to the 7th lesson as well. මතකනේ අපි 7th lesson එක කතා කරනකොට data flow modeling ගැන කතා කරනකොට we talk about developing the interface and the program, that is what you call coding. Then we are developing the particular database as well, right? Logical data structure is the word that we use on that particular lesson, right? But when it comes to here, we use the ER diagram, the DBMS term, right? So ER diagram is drawn to identify or to understand what are the relationship between the entities in a particular environment where we going to store data about it, right? අපි දත්ත ගබඩා කරගන්න ඕන entities වල connections කොහොමද, relationships කොහොමද තියෙන්නේ කියන එක. So as an example, if you think about creating a student information system or school information system, so inside the school there can be we should store the data about the students, about the teachers, about the non-academic staff, about the classes, right, about the other resources in the school, right? So those are called the entities, right? So the student, teachers, classes, right, those are called entities. So entity can be an institute, a department, a person, right, or a thing, right, can be act as that, right? And for a particular entity, there will be attributes which describe the entity. Right now, if you take a student, it is an entity. So that particular student will be described by his name, by the index number, by the date of birth, by his address, right? So there will be characteristics which describes that particular entity. And those are called attributes. So entities are there, attributes are there. And like in between the student and the teacher, two separate entities, will have a relationship. The relationship is teacher is teaching to the student. So teaching is the relationship between the teacher and the student. So likewise, when a particular scenario happens in the practical world, we try to figure out what are the relationship, what are the entities, what are the attributes that is happening around here. So regarding those, we can create the database. And always remember, we are going to create database over here, right? Okay. So the first thing that I'm going to introduce here is what is an entity, right? So entity, right? So entity can be a person, a thing. Yes, Susan?
I was being naughty with me.
No, I'm not doing naughty with you.
Yes, Mommy was very naughty.
Why? What's the problem?
He was being angry. Mommy was being angry with me.
Why? Were you naughty?
Yes, I am. But I don't back.
She told me. Right. So an entity can be a person, a thing, right? A department, right? So something like that, right? So in simple words, entity is going to be a thing or a component that we can identify individually, right? So as an example, teacher, student, university, a school. Just a second, I have to answer this. Hello. Right. So these things, right? And a classroom or a class, right? So likewise, entities can be defined, right? Then ඕගලන්ට විභාගෙදී මේක උවමනා වෙන්නේ you will be given a particular scenario, right? Then practical world ekේ නම්, the database developers will visit to the place where it needs a database and they observe what happens, right? And they like recognize the entities and they see how the things are going to be stored. In the examination, you will be given a particular scenario by explaining some things. Then in the explanation, you have to recognize what are the entities are. So the most easiest way to recognize the entities is to recognize the nouns inside that particular scenario. Because nouns, either it can be an entity or it can be an attribute. So you can separate the entities from the attributes, because entity is something that can stand alone. Attributes is something that describe an entity, right? So if there is student, student name, address, and date of birth, you can clearly identify, okay, student is going to be the entity and student name, address, date of birth are going to be the attributes, right? So in the ER diagram, we represent the entity using a square. Using a rectangle. And inside this rectangle, we had to write the name of the entity, and it should be a singular noun. So like student. In the scenario, we can find the nouns that they are referring like students, teachers, and all these things. But when it comes to the ER diagram, always remember it's a singular noun, right? And these entities, there are two types of entities that we can find when we are talking about the scenario, right? There are strong entities and there are weak entities, right? So strong entity means that entity can stand by itself without depending on anything else, right? So strong entity is not depending on any other entity. And weak entity, this is always depends on another entity. Now, how we are going to recognize this? Think practically. Now, if you take the school environment, there will be entities like student, teacher, classrooms, right? Likewise. So, depending means when some entity, like assuming some entity is cancelled, the depending entity is also going to be cancelled because of the dependent entity is gone, right? So it's like this. Now teacher, the entity teacher is not going to disappear if the student entity is disappeared, because teacher is not depending on the student. Students la නැති වුණා කියලා teachers la නැති වෙන්නේ නැහැ. In practical scenario, right? ඒ වගේම තමයි teachers la නැති වුණා කියලා students la නැති වෙන්නෙත් නැහැ. Entity wise අපි අරගත්තා. But if you think about the entity called parent and the student, now in the school environment, the school scenario, parent is there because of the student. School එකට parent කෙනෙක් connect වෙන්නේ because his or her child is in the school. Otherwise, they don't have any business with it, right? So if the student is cancelled, then the parent is going to be cancelled automatically, right? So that particular entity is called a weak entity, right? So strong entity, we indicate it with one line, right? Student. And weak entity, we indicate it by double lines, right? Here we say parent. And later you will learn why this diamond shape is there. It is called the relationship. So relationship is going to have a verb always. And when a weak entity is connected with a strong entity, the relationship is also weak. So because of that, we put double lines to the relationship as well. Right. මේ ටික තේරුණාද? This is about the entities and all these things. Right, great. Hari, tagala ලියාගමු අපි. Well, let me know when you are done, people. Jinani, when it comes to the primary keys, Jinani, we are going to talk about it as well. So strong entities also having a primary key as well as the weak entities having the primary key. But as you ask, there is an effect from the strong entity's primary key to the weak entity's primary key. And you'll get to know how it happens. Right. So 2 are done. How about others? Right. 3 are done. How about other 3? Okay. 4 are done. How about other 2? Right. So I'm moving to the other part. So the second one is called the attributes. Right. So the first one, we talk about the entities. Secondly, we are going to talk about the attributes. Right. Now these attributes will describe the entity, right? So to describe an entity, there are different kinds of attributes, right? So generally the attribute is indicated by an oval, right? And inside it, we can write the attribute name, right? So what is the attribute? Like name, you can have address, likewise. And these attributes are not going to like stay like this. It is always connected with the corresponding entity. So the entity is student, so it is connected like this, right? So that is how generally you can see the attributes. And there are various formats of these attributes. So the very first format is called the composite attributes. Right? Now, composite attribute means when a particular attribute is a collection of further little attributes, or like when an attribute can be further divided into more smaller attributes, we call it a composite attribute, right? So as an example, the address. Now the address attribute, we can further decompose it like the number and the street name and the town, right? So number, street name, town together forms the address. So this kind of a attribute is called a composite attribute, right? Hari. තේරුණාද මෙතනට වෙනකම්? Okay. Right. Then there is another type called yes, Jinani. We can take it like that. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, Lalindi. Yes, Lalindi. Goes the same way. Goes the same way. Right? And the next type is called the multi-value attribute. Now, multi-value attribute means a particular attribute can contain more than one value. The උඩ අපි කිව්වේ values ගැන නෙවෙයි. It's the parts of that attribute. So that means a particular attribute can be decomposed into several parts. But when it comes to multi-value, we can't decompose it. But for that particular attribute, for a certain entity can have many different values. Then as an example, a particular person may have only one address, but he may have several number of contacts. Right? He may have a land phone contact, he may have a 1 or 2 mobile phone contacts. So it is the contact is called multi-value attribute. So one attribute, but many values it can have, right? So multi-value attribute is indicated by using 2-line oval, right? So we can say contact, right? So this means when it comes to the database, right, later you will realize database is going to have this attribute name as it feels. So it can have contact. So the same person, I'm going to draw it with the person, right? So let's say the name over here. So a name called Saman can have like several different numbers. Right? So likewise, this is called multi-value attributes. Right? So in the way we learn, this is going to be Saman in all the places. Right? So the same Saman is going to have many contact numbers. So it is a multi-value attribute. Then there is something called complex attributes. Now, when it comes to the complex attributes, now this is called a collection of composite and multi-value, right? So we are not finding these things in our questions, right? But it's better we know, right? So this is a combination of composite and multi-valued attributes, right? So as an example, we can say, now there is a contact number. So it is a multi-value, and it can be divided into country code and the local code. Right? So you can assume this particular name and the contact table the very same way. Contact can be further divided into country code and local code. So +94 කියලා කියන්නේ country code එක. Local code එක, it's going to be the rest of the things after the +94. Right? So these are called complex attributes. තේරුණාද? Is it clear, people?
So I would like the complex attribute කියන
එතකොට complex කියලා කියන්නේ නිර්මාණ අර අපි උඩ කතා කරපු දෙන්නගේ එකතුවක්. කියන්නේ composite එක්කෙනා කියලා කියන්නේ attribute එකක් තව දුරටත් කොටස් වලට බෙදන්න පුළුවන් වුණාමනේ. එතකොට මේ contact කියන එක දැන් එහෙම කොටස් දෙකකට බෙදලා තියෙනවා. country code එකයි local code එකයි කියලා. එතකොට ඒ පැත්තෙන් බැලුවොත් එයා composite එක්කෙනෙක්. ඊට පස්සේ contact එකම පුද්ගලයෙක් ගත්තොත් එයාට contacts කීපයක් තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒතර අනිත් පැත්තෙන් ඒක multi value attribute එක. right? ඒතර දෙකම එකතු වෙලා හැදිලා තියෙන නිසා තමයි මේකට complex attribute එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ. හරි?
හරි සර්.
right.
ඒක උඩ දෙකෙන්ම මේ වෙලානේ.
ඔව්. ඒ කියන්නේ උඩ කියන කතා කරපු දෙකෙන්ම. yeah, Lalindi, what you are saying is like, so +94 is common, going to be common. Then දුව හිතන්නකෝ මේ එකම එක්කෙනාට like local number එකකුයි international number එකකුයි දෙකක් තිබුණා කියලා. So it's going to be differ දුව. Right? Like if he's got contact numbers in several different countries, so it's going to be different contact numbers. Anyway, the local code is going to be different. Right? Okay. So part D, or like the other one, here we are going to talk about two types of attributes. මොකද ඒ දෙන්න එකට කතා කරන්න වෙන්නේ. This one is called the derived and stored attributes. Right? So derived and stored means stored attribute will help to derive the derived attribute, like date of birth and age, right? So a particular person can have, so let's say the student is having the date of birth. So using the date of birth, we are going to derive the age, right? So the age කියන එක අපි user කෙනෙක්ගෙන් input කරගෙන හරි එහෙම කරන්න යන්නේ. Using the date of birth and comparing the today's date with the date of birth, we are calculating what is the age is, right? So this is called the stored attribute, and this is called the derived attribute. Right? And the very last one is called the descriptive attribute. Right? So now descriptive attribute. Now so far we saw the attributes are given upon an entity, right? But a descriptive attribute can be found on a relationship. That means the diamond box that we are talking about, right? So if we take two entities like employee we say works on a department, right? So employee may have employee ID, right, which we are going to consider as the key attribute. I'm going to show it what the key attribute is, right? And name can be there, and department DID, department ID, and let's say location is there. So name belongs to the employee, employee ID belongs to the employee. Likewise, DID belongs to the department, totally location belongs to the department, right? But in this scenario, according to the scenario, if they says something like this, an employee needs to work predefined hours on a department, right? So in that particular sentence, they are talking about the entities, the employee and the department, and they are talking about the relationship, works on or like needs to work. And there is another noun which is says predefined hours. Now this predefined hours is an attribute which describes the working time period of an employee in a department. So we can't take the predefined hours and fix into the employee because it won't show in which department, regarding which department these predefined hours are there. Employee to them මොන department එකේ predefined hours ද කියලා අඳුන ගන්න බෑ because it belongs to the employee. It don't recognize the department. And if you put it into the department, again it cannot be clarified regarding which employee this particular predefined hours are there, because from employee to employee predefined hours can be different, right? So because of that, we put this onto the relationship saying predefined hours. So this indicates this particular attribute is belongs to the employee as well as department, right? So this is what we call descriptive. Right. තේරුණාද? Right. ජිනානි මම ආයි කියනවා. ජිනානි ප්‍රැක්ටිකල් සිටුේෂන් එක හිතන්න. මෙතන කියලා තියෙන්නේ එම්ප්ලොයි කෙනෙක් ඩිපාර්ට්මන්ට් එකක වැඩ කරන්න ෆික්ස් කරපු අවර්ස් ගණක් තියෙනවා. ඒතර හිතන්නකො කම්පැනි එකක් තියෙනවා, there are many employees, there are many departments, right? So each and every employee is given some particular hours. It differs from employee to employee for particular department, right? හිතන්නකො sales department සුහරා sales department එකේ පැය 2යි, purchasing department එකේ පැය 3යි වැඩ කරන්න ඕනේ එක employee කෙනෙක්. තව employee කෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා, එයා HR department එකේ පැය 4යි, purchasing department එකේ පැය 2යි වැඩ කරන්න ඕනේ. Likewise it differs, right? දැන් අපි attributes කියලා කතා කරේ දුව entity එකක් describe කරන දේවල් කියලා. එතකොට EID එකයි name එකයි අරගත්තොත් employee ID name අරගත්තොත් employee ට අදාළව employee ID එක a particular employee ව describe කරන දෙයක්. මොකද it belongs to particular employee එක්කෙනෙකුට විතරයි. name එක ගත්තොත් a particular employee ට අදාළව තමයි නම තියෙන්නේ. හැබැයි අපි predefined hours කියන එක අපි fix කරුවොත් employee කියන entity එකට. එතකොට ගැටලුවක් වෙනවා, මොකද එයා එක එක department වලට එක එක hours ප්‍රමාණයන් තියෙන නිසා එකක් එක illustrate කරන්න ගියාම ප්‍රශ්නයක් වෙනවා. right? මොකද departments ගොඩක් තියෙනවා, කොහොමද ඒක illustrate කරගන්නේ? ඒ වගේම තමයි මොකක් හෝ ක්‍රමයකින් illustrate කරා කියලා හිතන්නකො. එතකොට ප්‍රශ්නයක් වෙනවා, දැන් employee කියන entity එකට අපි දාන්නේ employee ව describe කරන එක. So predefined hours කියන එක employee plus department එකක් describe කරනවා. මොකද එක employee කෙනෙක් මේ particular department එකක වැඩ කරන්න ඕන hours ගන්න ගැන තමයි එතනදී කතා කරන්නේ. ඒක නිසා ඒක employee ගේ පැත්තේ විතරක් තියන්න බෑ. So same happens with the department side. department එකට predefined hours දැම්මොත් employees ලා ගොඩක් ඉන්නවා, එක එක අය එක එක department වල එක එක වෙලාවට වැඩ කරන්නේ. So predefined hours කියන එක department පැත්තේ දැම්මොත් ඒක describe කරන්නේ department එක විතරක් වෙනවා. department table එක ඇතුලේ අපි අවසානයේ මේ වයින් හදන්නේ tables නේ. දත්ත තියාගන්න අපි හදන්නේ tables. So ඒ table එක ඇතුලේ hours ගණක් තියෙනවා. හැබැයි ඒකෙන් clarify වෙන්නේ මොන employee ට අදාළවද මේ hours ගන්න තියෙන්නේ කියන්නේ. So ඒක නිසා අපි මේ වගේ අවස්ථාවල්, ඒ කියන්නේ entities දෙකම සම්බන්ධ වෙලා කතා කරන attributes. දැන් දුවට ඔක මේ diagram එක අඳිනකොට තව හොඳට පැහැදිලි වෙයි. එහෙම attributes අපි descriptive එකට දානවා. හේතුව තමයි අපි මේකෙන් table structure එකක් derive කරනවා ඉස්සරහට. එතනදී මේ කියන මේ જાතිය descriptive attribute හරි දැනට වට ගන්න තමයි මේ කියන method එක අපි පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ. clear ද දුව? right. okay, right. දැන් වෙලාව පහු වෙලා ගිහිල්ලා තියෙන නිසා ඊළඟ දවසේ ක්ලාස් එක පටන් ගත්ත ගමන් අපි මේ attributes ගැන note එක ලියාගමු. ලියාගෙන ඊළඟ දේවල් ටිකට යමු. right? So from this point I'm going to end the session, people. right? So I'll see you on next week for the very same time to continue the ER diagrams. right? All right. Okay, thank you very much and have a very good night, people. right? Okay, right. Okay, good night, Narendra. Good night, everyone. right, Minidi, thank you very much. Good night, Irvana. Good night.